Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Daily Faded, where we get faded daily and talk about politics and news. My name is Hetz, and let's dive right into it. So this is the Daily Faded episode number 31, April 15th, 2020. Trump threatens to adjourn Congress. Yes, Donald Trump threatened to adjourn Congress today. I actually went to look for it in Article 2, Section 3, and I was just glancing and I didn't find it. So I would have to read the whole thing where he's given the power to adjourn Congress. Basically, Trump, and I'm only going to talk about Trump a little bit today, or at least only going to talk about the press conference a little bit today. Trump threatened to adjourn Congress so that he could do recess appointments. Obviously, he has a lot of appointees waiting for confirmation. And if Congress was in recess, then he could do recess appointments without confirmation. So Mitch McConnell quickly dashed that idea and said it wouldn't happen. So that's just kind of interesting. But again, it's more blaming by Trump and more, just autocratic lunatic behavior. He just wants to lash out at others and blame other people for his failures. Whereas I take responsibility for my failures. Someone commented today that this was one of the trashiest channels on YouTube. I'm very proud of that. Thank you. I tip the hat to you, sir or ma'am. Notice we weren't the trashiest channel on YouTube. So the payments that are going out to people by check are being delayed so that Trump's name can be added to the check. Trump legally cannot be the signer of the check, so they're putting his signature in the memo section. Just another monument to narcissism. Crazy, just totally crazy. And by the way, while I am not fond of the idea of Trump adjourning Congress, I'm also not particularly impressed with Congress. And the fact of the matter is they're not really in session right now. He is right when he charges them with doing these pro forma sessions. It is true. So there are no good guys in this situation. Tomorrow, we have been promised information about openings. Oh, it's going to be a long night. About openings in some states. Apparently, we're going to be hearing some recommendations tomorrow. So that's something thrilling to look forward to. The LA Times reports that the bear population in Yosemite has quadrupled, along with more bobcats, coyote, and other fauna. Watch out for mountain lions. They will kick your ass in Red Dead Redemption 2. Kick your ass and you won't see it coming. Gotta watch out for that shit. Boy, I don't know what order to put these in. The IMF is predicting the biggest economic downturn since the Great Depression. I agree with this prediction. It seems obvious to me that that's what's happening. It's what's happening right now as people are losing their jobs by the tens of millions. and consumer spending is down by what, 50%, 40%? I don't know. A couple of days ago, Stephanie Kelton tweeted, "In a sane world, the government would deliver a small package to every person in America each month: face masks, gloves, a prepaid debit card, testing kits, information about how to vote by mail, all delivered by USPS." Um, I love Stephanie Kelton. She is one of my two favorite economists. Um, on a side note, if Joe Biden made Stephanie Kelton his chief economist, I would vote for Joe Biden, but that would never happen. So she was actually on a live stream panel type thing with Bernie Sanders and Robert Reich and a couple of other smarty pants. And the biggest thing they were talking about was obviously Medicare for all, but then they were also talking about paycheck replacement programs, you know, um, which I'm going to get back to in a couple of minutes, in just a minute, actually. Because Gavin Newsom had a solution to the employment question and the pay question that I thought was very interesting. He was talking about California's work share program, which is a program which we received a grant from the government to pursue. And he proposed national employment insurance, which would prevent unemployment in the first place. So the idea is that you create a federal insurance program that insures people's salaries in downturns. Even if they're working part-time and you're covering a portion of their salary. This is a good idea. A federal employment insurance is a good idea. It's a variant of the Paycheck Protection Program in the CARES Act, but it's much closer to what Denmark and the UK are doing, where they're just taking over the payroll of companies to ensure that companies don't fire anybody and that they don't go out of business. It's a business-focused policy that has a progressive outcome. Look, it's not the best approach because I'm not sure. Let's put it this way. I wouldn't want this in lieu of other social safety net features, but in accordance with them in, working with other social safety net features. But I think that would be a game changer with a living wage, which should be $20 an hour. But here's what I've been thinking today. A UBI that covers housing and food costs fixed to the median costs for housing and food in a large city. So yes, people who chose to live in the countryside where things cost less would get more mileage out of their money. But you would have the ability to choose where you live because you would have enough money to pay for your housing and your food wherever you go. Now, this works in concert with Medicare for All so that healthcare is free at the point of service, and it works in concert with a free education. Now, on top of that, you have your salary, and it may be taxed at a high rate. I don't know. I'm not sure. But your necessity is provided for. and everyone's necessity is provided for equally. Um, Again, you'd have to use a median number, not a poverty number. So, for an individual living in Los Angeles, they should be able to afford a one-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles, not necessarily in Beverly Hills, but also um, not someplace where you wouldn't want to live. Um, but of course, I would also combine that with robust, high-quality public housing. Um, but think about it. You would create real upward mobility. The homeless would become housed. That person who can afford a one-bedroom apartment in the city could afford a two-bedroom apartment, or maybe that person with a two-bedroom apartment can save up to have a down payment on a house. Maybe that family that has a house that they've outgrown can get into a bigger house. As you go higher up on the income scale, the amount of money becomes a smaller and smaller percentage of their overall finances, and less relevant. But by giving it to everyone, there's no stigmatizing people for taking it. There's no. It's actually uh, good for class relations because everyone gets it. So that's just something that I got to thinking about when I was listening to Gavin Newsom talk about that idea. One other interesting thing about when he proposed the employment insurance program as a federal program, he was also saying for it to be an ongoing program. And I think it was notable that he said that they want to do this and they think it's a good national model as well. Because he doesn't usually say anything about national politics. And that felt like a little hint, like, oh, and hey, this might be an idea I'll be running on in 2024. Gavin Newsom also did something today that no other governor in the country has done, which is he announced $125 million in aid to undocumented workers. I couldn't be prouder to be Californian because I believe in a humane and just society. And in a humane and just society, you take care of everybody. And I don't know if $125 million is enough. I don't know how it will be distributed. But, and interestingly enough, 50% of that, I'm sorry, 50 million of the $125 million is philanthropy that's been raised by all kinds of rich people. So hats off to them for doing that as well. The other 75 million comes from the state of California. So yeah, I think that's really exciting, and I think whatever phase 4 legislation comes through the House should have something for undocumented people. They're living through this crisis as well, and they're more likely to be unemployed. Um, and statistically, they're more likely to have the virus, and statistically they're more likely to die. So definitely. So I wanted to talk tonight about the Council to Reopen America, or as I like to call them, the Thieves Guild to Rip Off America. These names were announced, I think, yesterday, or the day, maybe even the day before. There isn't a single doctor or scientist on this council. So the whole thing is, I mean, if they have any power, then it's a threat to everyone. If if Trump is still going to listen to Fauci and will be able to hold them at bay. I just don't know if that's going to happen or not. So it's Chief of Staff and ultra conservative Mark Meadows, the new Chief of Staff. The nepotism poster children, Ivanka and Jared. What qualifications do they have to be on this council? They have no qualifications whatsoever. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, who ripped off grandmas during the 2008 crisis. He's such a good guy. He foreclosed on grandmas who were less than $1 late on less than $1 payment, and he kicked them out of their homes. And the Attorney General's office, the assistants and junior attorneys in the Attorney General's office had I believe they said they had thousands of instances of fraud of under One West Bank under Steve Mnuchin, and they recommended prosecution of Steve Mnuchin, and Kamala Harris did not prosecute him. And by some strange coincidence, the only Democrat to whom Steve Mnuchin has ever given a political donation was Kamala Harris. So, yes, excited to have Steve Mnuchin on the council. Professional wrong person, as Kyle Kulinski likes to say. Professional wrong person, Larry Kudlow, who infamously said that the economy was great in 2008 and it was going to keep going up. This guy is wrong. If he's speaking, he's wrong. He's wrong more than I'm wrong. And I have one of the trashiest channels on YouTube. So, I mean, he's, U.S. Trade Rep Robert Lighthizer, who has been in and out of government since 1978, working on finance and trade issues and fighting to hollow out the American economy and ship jobs overseas. So yeah, he's worker friendly. There's no one from a union. There's no one representing workers on the Council to Reopen America. How can you possibly have a Council to Reopen America and not be talking to workers? And then, of course, perennial crypt keeper and narcoleptic billionaire Wilbur Ross, who ran the Bank of Cyprus, a money laundering outfit favored by Russian oligarchs. And no, I don't really do a lot of Russia stuff, but that is true. Wilbur Ross, who falls asleep on TV all the time. I mean, I don't even know what the point of having him in the meeting is, because what's he going to do? Snore? Is that going to be his contribution, his snoring? There's not a single doctor, healthcare professional, or scientist among these people. How on earth can they possibly come up with a plan to reopen the economy? How can they come up with a plan to reopen the economy without an expert, without a medical expert? That's insanity. It's insanity. Well, it's also corruption, because all they're doing is what they think is in the interests of big business. But it's not in the interest of big business to reopen the economy quickly. They only think it is. They're going to reopen too quickly. Then there's going to be a second wave. The second wave is going to be massive and bloody. And then they're going to have to shut it down again. And it's going to forestall actually being able to get the economy up and running again. The economy as we knew it is gone. It's gone. There aren't going to be any concerts this year. There's not going to be any music festivals this year. There's not going to be any movies this year. No Disneyland, no cruises. Nobody's going to want to fly. Restaurants are going to be very sketchy. This thing is not going to jump back. And to risk lives to try and get it to artificially do so is insane. We have to build a new economy that takes into account. I mean, the reality is large gatherings in public are not going to be safe until there's a vaccine for this virus. That's just the reality. You're not going to be able to. Dr. Deborah Birx made a comment about not having that dinner party for 20 people. And it was like, it's going to be a long time before you can have a dinner party with 20 people over. It's going to be a really long time. But these ghouls are going to urge full speed ahead as soon as possible. And, maybe Dr. Fauci's influence is going to reach its end. I don't know. There's one more person on the Council to Reopen America who I forgot to mention, which is Art Laffer. Yay, Art Laffer. Presidential Medal of Freedom holder from Donald Trump, inventor of the obviously errant Laffer curve, the obviously fallacious Laffer curve. It literally just doesn't make sense. This idea of you lower taxes to raise revenue. And there's no evidence that it works. It doesn't work. Donald Trump passed a huge tax theft bill. And did that increase government revenues? No. They told us it was going to. They gave us the Art Laffer line, hook, line, and sinker. I don't know why anyone takes Art Laffer seriously. I mean, really, the notion that you would have Art Laffer and not have Stephanie Kelton. I can understand why you might not have Richard Wolff. He might be one step too far, an actual Marxist. But Art Laffer, oh my God. He was an architect of the Reagan-era tax cuts that paved the way for the historic budget deficits in the United States. And he supposedly has a plan. Listen to this. Art Laffer has a plan to rejuvenate today's pandemic crippled economy. I have to smoke before. If you're new to the stream, please smoke with me or have a sip of something. If you're not new to the stream, please smoke with me or have a sip of something. So here's Art Laffer's plan to rejuvenate today's pandemic crippled economy. Tax nonprofits. Oh, that's a great idea. Cut the pay of public officials and professors. Give businesses and workers who manage to hold on to their jobs a payroll tax holiday to the end of the year. Asked, what about the extra aid funneled to newly jobless workers by the $2.3 trillion fiscal rescue package, which again is a $6.5 billion package once you take into consideration the Fed funding that it authorizes. Such government spending, Laffer told Reuters in an interview, will only serve to deepen the downturn and slow the recovery. If you tax people who work and you pay people who don't work, you will get less people working, Laffer said. If you make it more unattractive to be unemployed, then there's an incentive to go look for another job faster. This is the same kind of bullshit that we've been having shoved down our throats for decades now. Decades of this nonsense trickle-down economic bullshit. It's just complete bullshit. And this notion of, shaming people to work, this notion that people can't be provided for, that it's law of the jungle in the United States, I'm sick of it. And I think that when you see how many people fall through the cracks, how many people are sick, how many people are dying right now, who maybe wouldn't have gotten sick. Well, I'm not going to go down that path right now, but the Laffer curve is delusional nonsense. It's putting capitalism over science, and that's what this council is set up to do, to put capitalism over science, to put capitalism over public health, to put capitalism over the pursuit of life. And yet, these are probably all pro-lifers. They should ditch the entire council and start over again with Stephanie Kelton leading the economic side and Dr. Fauci leading the medical side, if he even has time to do that right now. So this is what we're getting from DC. This is what we're getting from the Trump administration. Look back. If you didn't watch it, check out my live stream from last night, where I talked about the 6 principles that are guiding reopening California that were laid out by Gavin Newsom and Dr. Engel yesterday. It was really impressive, thoroughly thought out. I'm sure it does. I'm sure some things fall through the cracks, but I don't know what they are. And I don't want to just do propaganda for Gavin Newsom, but I think he's got. I think the state has got a remarkable approach, and even Eric Garcetti came out and laid out the 5 principles that the city of Los Angeles is using for its imagining of how it might reopen. I did forget to mention one thing today. I don't know. Did we talk about the death tolls? I know we're over 30,000 nationally, and today we had our highest death toll in LA of 42. Yesterday was the previous high of 40, but we topped that today at 42. So I only have a couple of more things to talk about, but look at that. Time flies. There was an article in the LAist a few days ago, which is kind of where I get a lot of my local news from. And it was why May 15th, a top LA County doctor explains where we are on flattening the curve. LA County has extended its stay-at-home order through May 15th to try to keep the number of coronavirus cases as low as possible. The order was originally set to expire April 19th. Dr. Christina Gailey, the director of the Los Angeles County Department of Health Services, says we are bending the curve, but if physical distancing doesn't continue, quote, we would project that by the middle of the summer, virtually all residents in Los Angeles County would have been exposed or infected with COVID-19. The projections show that up to 96% of people would have been exposed, and we know that for every 100 people exposed, 3% of those people need hospitalization, and 1% of those people need ICU care. So I was hanging on to this, and I didn't have time to talk about it last night. This was actually over the weekend, maybe? I'm not sure. But this motherfucker is contagious. This is some serious shit here. And I really wonder how restaurants reopen. I don't want to go to a restaurant right now. Sit in a stagnant room full of people not wearing masks. Respiratory micro droplets going all over the place. And your waiter has a mask and gloves. I don't know if I want to be waited on by someone with a mask and gloves. So Dr. Gailey says that shows just how quickly our hospitals could be overwhelmed if we ease up on the restrictions now. She added that even with the measures in place now, every positive COVID-19 case is infecting at least one other person and sometimes up to 2 or 3 people. So, the disease has not gone away. The virus has not gone away. It's out there and it's waiting for us to come help it transmit some more. And now the 2 greatest shortcomings of the Trump administration are not getting enough testing up and running and not getting a contact tracing system up and running. We have to hire probably tens of thousands of people to work for health departments to contact trace people who have been exposed to the virus or people who have tested positive for the virus. And we are going to need to be able to track people down, and we're going to need to be able to isolate people, and we're going to need to be able to take care of people who are isolated. So Trump isn't talking about doing any of that. None of it. Um, Gavin Newsom is. One of the things in the Gavin Newsom presentation was that there would be new opportunities because they're going to have to hire a lot of people. So they would be creating jobs. So that at least that would be one small benefit. Although I have to tell you, contact tracing COVID-19 patients does not sound like a good job opportunity to me. But even now, each COVID-19 case is infecting at least one other person and sometimes up to 2 or 3 people. Look, if I catch it at the grocery store, it's going to infect 4 myself and 3 other people, me and the rest of my family, and maybe my dogs. Yes, Kentucky Original Fried Chicken. Thank you for that, Marshall Gordon. I'm stoned, so you just got me to say Kentucky Original Fried Chicken. So there's one other thing that I've been following kind of casually, and that is the number of U.S. service members with COVID-19 and the numbers of deaths. The incident with the Theodore Roosevelt and Captain Crozier just didn't really add up to me. People are in such close quarters in the military, especially on an aircraft carrier, that the viral spread seems incredibly dangerous in the military, and it seems obvious that there would be a serious problem. I don't personally trust the Department of Defense ever. I don't trust anything they say. I guess I trust them to build these emergency hospitals, and I trust them with their hospital ships. And I don't have anything against any individual person in the armed services, but I don't trust what the brass at DoD says. They lie to us all the time. Clearly they were sending a message to commanders by firing Captain Crozier. They were sending a message to tamp down any talk of COVID-19 in the military. That was obvious. So the other day, I think this was yesterday. I looked at it, and military cases were up 34% at 4,528. And there were 15 deaths, which was up 25%. Today, it's 4,769 cases and 16 deaths. I just have trouble believing these numbers are accurate. There's 1.3 million active duty personnel working together in tight quarters, plus another 800,000 reservists. One of the problems that exacerbated the influenza pandemic of 1918 was that a lot of American GIs caught it during basic training. Some people say that it originated in Kansas, and the military guys were among the first to have it. It did not originate in Spain, despite it falsely being called the Spanish flu. And then they went to Europe and they brought it with them in tightly packed groups on ships across the Atlantic Ocean, and everybody got sick. And what did they do? They lied about it. They covered it up. They censored news about the pandemic, which is why it was called the Spanish flu, because Spain was neutral and they weren't censoring their press, and the Spanish press was writing about the flu outbreak, and other countries' media were not. So I don't know. I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist or anything. I just think it defies logic. And I think that the numbers are going to go up significantly among military personnel. And I don't want them to. I don't wish it on anyone. Um, although I am going to still mock Boris Johnson for bragging about shaking hands with COVID-19 doctors and then ending up in the ICU. He didn't die, so we can laugh at him over it. Oh yes, I'm gonna keep that one in mind. Um, and on the joyful thought of Boris Johnson, I am gonna wrap this up and call it a night. Um, thank you so much for tuning in. Please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. And I'll be back again tomorrow night at 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific. I am Hetz. Follow me on Twitter at @the_Hetz. And peace out. Stay safe. Stay well. Stay home.